Welcome back. You join us for the end of week one in what continues to be an entirely thrilling 4-week series of Pro Power preview races right here on CADEsport. So as the final race in week one, this is the last time you'll see our riders race in the eponymous Cyclogent City. So let's take a look at the course. So it is a 16.6 kilometer or 10.3 mile course that sees our riders begin in the hustle and bustle of the entirely modern downtown core. From there, as they exit the city, they will then take a wide sweeping corner that sees them elevate above the city's dam, where they will get to have wonderful views over the entire cityscape. Descending from there, they're going to hit some tight hairpin crit style corners, and as they leave that tight cornering that they'll have to use all of their attention for, they will get into the flat lowlands of the farmlands beyond the city. As they elevate from there, they're going to want to get out of the saddle, get into their drops, and really put every ounce of power they have for the final push through Cyclogent Park and to the finish line. Today we're going to be using the physical equalization system that powers the Pro Power mode in CADEsport. That means that riders will be staying with the pack as it takes the baseline of their power, and it essentially uses a very clever algorithm to make sure that riders ride together by equalizing it to what a pro rider in, for example, the Tour de France might look like on their wattage. Each rider will have 2 power-ups today, and 2 of each, I should mention. So we've got the corner caper, which will help riders in corners, give them a short 20-second advantage, and wind at your back, which will give riders a 20 kilometer an hour or 12 miles per hour boost, almost as if they have a tailwind behind them. And here we can see the series of events that we have scheduled across the mentioned 4 weeks. Now let's join the riders, as I'm sure they're feeling the tension, ready at that start line. This is another fantastic thing about CADEsport, is you do get a warm-up. So this will help today's riders be prepared, perhaps remove some of those nerves that they have. Verbika once again showing really good form even on her warm-up. Pedro, I'm really happy to see Pedro return. He put in a solid battle for second place, which sadly he lost on the first race on Tuesday. But I'm an endurance rider myself. That's the be-all and end-all of my competitive experience. And what I can say for sure with my trained eye from endurance is that he had fantastic form. So here we go, 7 seconds or 5 seconds now before we go live. And we are fresh out of the gates. Verbika there putting in some solid effort for that second and third place position. Acing past Vanessa from the CADEsport team, and we can see Verbika really putting in some solid effort there. Early days for her pain face yet, but I'm sure we're going to see it as we get closer there, and we can see the proud display of her flag of Denmark on her left arm there. Erhan, who was much lower down the ranks last time, has flown away with the lead position right now. And this is a testament really to the physical equalization system that is patented to CADEsport that really powers the Pro Power mode. And it shows you that really anyone can win a race. So Erhan from Turkey is just up and away at it at the moment. And the physical equalization system really takes away some of my trained eye in what I can see here, because like I say, it's leveling up the power system to what we would see the wattage being from, let's say, a Tour de France rider, like a pro cyclist for sure. But what I can see is that Erhan is probably in a sweet spot. And what I mean by that is just a little bit beneath threshold, really holding something good, and that's a really good tactic to have, because it means you're going pretty solid but not full gas. It means you're saving something for that final push in that final, let's say, half a kilometer. Pedro once again showing fantastic form for that second place, but Verbika is not giving him an inch. She is hugging that rear wheel. So Pedro's not on a team, open to invites. I'm going to say he would be a good team player, a good tactician. Oh, and a good upset here for first place. Pedro is certainly coming out with full guns today. Erhan's not going to give that up without a fight, however. So we're seeing some solid form here. I don't think we have many teams today, but if we did, a good tactic for sure would be, again, to lean on that example of Tour de France, would be for a team to maybe form an echelon. Imagine like a V shape of a flock of geese, really block out any other players, any other riders. And Erhan is really keeping that challenge up. Pedro once again holding a very stable form. And Vanessa, who has consistently been around middle of the table, is really putting in a solid challenge today. Vanessa being with the CADEsport team, with the company Cyclogent, who are the creators of CADEsport. So Pedro once again in lead, but there is a solid fight here for lead position. And Luca from Italy is taking it from Pedro. Pedro, again, is just not giving an inch. Very, very good forms here we're seeing on riders. The animation, by the way, shows a reflection of pedal stroke if they do have a cyclometer or a RPM meter going. So I can see with a fairly discerned eye that everyone's keeping a very solid form. Luca, however, is trying to give it some full guns. And Verbika, a very, very solid rider. I'm not overly familiar with Verbika, but if you watched Thursday's race where I was joined by Beth is very familiar with Verbika, and it sounds like she does a borderline between racing and endurance, and certainly she would know how to keep a very solid form. And we're beginning to see a bit of a pain face there from Verbika. She is putting everything into that bike. Pedro taking it from Verbika, however. So we're yet to see what tactics riders are going to use as they get more comfortable with the steering. Steering, by the way, is a physically driven dynamic within the game world of CADEsport. There are two ways riders can do this. They can do it with button prompts, a la gaming, or they can do it with their smartphone by scanning the QR code in-game, which takes them to a mobile platform version. So if they have, let's say, a mount on their handlebars for a smartphone or a cell phone, they can do it by the gyroscope in their phone and steer as though they were in the real world, which adds yet another physical realism to this. So we've seen Luca steal it. Vanessa has stolen second place. Oh, and this is what we've been talking about across the races here. We also have the crash dynamic. So in game, we have easy mode, we have medium, and we have realistic for the difficulties. Easy being 1 second penalty on crashes, medium being 2.5 second, and realistic being 4. We are today equalized out for the sake of fairness in the races. So we have medium, which is 2.5 seconds. So that saw Luca lose that. And that's one of the things that can cause a great upset in this race. Vanessa is currently in lead position. Pedro, however, is certainly making it so that Vanessa can see the shadow of his front wheel creeping. But Vanessa is not going to give this up easily. Pedro certainly has his work cut out for him. So Carl-Eric is trying to catch up to this small peloton we have at the front for lead position. Carl Axel, I should say, from Sweden, had a very solid effort in the final race that we did on Thursday. And he has certainly got some work cut out for him here, but I believe he's got some chops to show us yet. Oh, a couple of devastating crashes there, which saw some of the competitors for lead position lose a couple of seconds. Oh. So yeah, that certainly hurt Luca, and it certainly hurt Carl's chase. But Pedro and Vanessa, so close on that rear wheel. Oh, and again, the crash dynamic can change everything in a second. So Vanessa has now lost out to Pedro. Very, very solid push from Vanessa there. I assume where she started off again in the real world, she had done a standing start to get some pressure on the pedals, and unfortunately that's been lost again with another crash. So Portugal's Pedro really showing us what he's made of here. Making it look easy. It's almost like watching one of those Cancellara pushes where he just gains an incredible lead and opens up a gap that is almost taunting. Vanessa, however, she is determined for that chase. Almost like Geraint Thomas chasing Cancellara. And so this is Pedro from Portugal, and we're seeing a pain face, but he's looking pretty cool while doing it. And he's certainly learned how to navigate those corners, ease off the pedals, maybe use the in-game braking function. So certainly real-world dynamics here. And what I mean by that is much the same as in the real world. If you go too fast into a corner, you can expect to certainly drift out. And if you don't have any control over that, you're going to drift out pretty hard. And we have somebody here. Who is this? Is this Erhan using the wind at your back feature, which again is much like a very strong tailwind, giving her a 20 kilometer an hour or 12 mile an hour boost. Oh, Erhan has certainly used that advantage to its full potential. And we now have a very, very solid peloton for that lead position. Nobody wants to give it up today. Look at that. It's almost like they could be towing each other. That's how much they're hugging each other's rear wheel. What an incredible chase by Erhan. And again, this is a very solid example of how in the Pro Power mode in CADEsport, the physical equalization system might mean that who might be the top athletes out in the real world might not necessarily be the winners. Being equalized is certainly going to give a mental edge to people who might be lesser down the pack, lower down the pack, lower down the league table. And that mental advantage actually plays a big part in physical too. Of course, still winning means you're going to have to show what you have physically in the tank and what kind of power you have in those legs, what you have under the hood, if you will, in that metaphor, that analogy, is certainly going to be the winning combination. But that mental aspect of it is going to play a huge part in it. So Carl Axel has pushed all the way up to second. Like I was saying earlier, he is certainly one to watch. Neck and neck with Pedro. This is certainly the most intense of a nail biter we've had for lead position. We have seen in the past two races that it's been a real fight, a real duke it out, if you will, for the second place position. And here's that fantastic view we were talking about, looking over that entire cityscape. These wonderful graphics powered under the hood by the Unity engine, but of course really dealt with by the great coders at Cyclogen, the company behind CADEsport. Vanessa once again stealing lead position from Pedro. But wow, there is no single competitor here who wants to give up that lead position. There's a lot of grit here for sure. Vanessa attempting to open up a little bit of a gap. Pedro just edging out Carl Axel for that second place position. Pedro showing us that he's not done yet. He's not out. Luca is coming back up the ranks too. Holy hell. Now Carl has taken it. I wouldn't want to be the guy who's going to guess who's going to take this one. Oh, Carl Axel using the wind at your back. Vanessa using the corner caper. In fact, a few people using corner caper to get through these hairpin turns. A very, very wise use of these by all players using it right now. A 20-second advantage on these, by the way. There's a 20-second recharge time, and then riders can use them again. They have 2 of each, the corner caper and the wind at your back. Vanessa used that to full advantage to keep that second place position. Carl Axel has now opened up a 3-second lead over Vanessa, however. First time we've seen Carl in lead position, and he's now using the wind at your back to open up that lead and the corner caper. That is a very clever use of both power-ups right there. Wow. Carl really showing us that he is the one to watch here. And his heart rate is certainly reflecting it. Wow. Oh, we had a crash here with Vibika. Oh, that's such a shame. That sees Vibika lose that chase. But Vibika is certainly a powerful rider, so we may see her attempt to claw something back. Oh, she's using both the corner caper and the wind at your back. Again, a very wise use of these power-ups, especially in this part of the course. Oh, maybe hugging that inside corner just a little bit too tight. Solid pain face there on Vibika. You can see everything that she's putting into the bike, or every ounce, every nanojoule, if you will, of calories going into those crank arms. There we go, she's getting that power back up. Really good form as well on a smart trainer, which I believe Vibika is on. Especially when you're anchored in like that, it's kind of better to move the body rather than trying to move the bike. So certainly helping to keep our comfort up while also putting in some very solid power. Let's take a look at Vanessa up at the front, if we can. So Vanessa giving the chase here to Carl Axel. But Carl has opened up an incredible lead, as we can see from the leaderboard to the right-hand side of the screen, a 15-second lead, a 15-second gap by Carl Axel. That was both by using his power-ups very, very wisely, but also just by sheer power as well. So let's take a look at the fly-in Swede. Here he is. Legs like cannons, I'm sure. Eased off a little bit, and we've seen that reflecting in his heart rate. So maybe showing off a bit, but certainly keeping up a very solid edge here. So we are in those low-lying farmlands that we discussed before. Vanessa is bringing that chase to Carl. She's certainly taken away a 3-second gap of his advantage, or 3 seconds of the gap, I should say. So here we go. Is this going to be a tortoise versus hare scenario? Or has Carl just won it already? Fantastic form in the corners here by Carl. Vanessa keeping pretty steady power. Nice handling by Vanessa too. So Carl is certainly being more cautious in the corners towards the end here, knowing that he's got to preserve that lead. This is an almost Cancellara lead, to use that analogy once again. Erhan holding steady on that third place position. And again, another good example of how pro power mode may change everything. Erhan much lower down in the table when we saw Erhan last on Tuesday. But Luca is not giving up here. A solid fight for this third place position. Is Erhan going to show Luca that they're not done yet? Pedro has fallen back quite a way, but again, very solid form, very consistent form that we're seeing from Pedro. And by that I mean the form that he's put into the bike, into his RPM. I think with that, if he does have an RPM meter, an RPM like Ant Plus or Bluetooth meter attached, I'm wondering if he's in the big chain ring and in the high tension gear. Because certainly the RPM from the animation looks somewhat slower. So I'm wondering if he's doing a big power push. Verbika here, she is making a very solid pursuit. I would assume to rank in the top 3. Let's see if she can close that gap. We can see that pain face. But looks like she's handling it like a pro. The gap has sadly opened up with Luca for third place. Oh, Vanessa has come back with Carl Axel. She opened up, she closed all of that gap. That was like a 14-second gap. That's an incredible effort by Vanessa. Did we miss a crash or something? Oh, Carl Axel certainly feeling the breath, the warmth of Vanessa's breath on his neck. Oh, he's putting in some incredible power now to try and open up that gap. Look at those power numbers. Certainly that's equalized with the Pro Power system, but it's certainly reflective of a big push for sure. Vanessa not giving up, however. Oh, wow. This is certainly one for the books. Again, I wouldn't want to place money on this. Carl Axel from Sweden being challenged by the USA's Vanessa. Wow, I think that was Carl Axel, hence the cheering animation there, but it was by a nose. Wow. Certainly a solid fight by Vanessa for that second place position. That was incredible for that first place position. And a love react there from Frank Garcia, CEO and founder of Cyclogen. We've got Erhan using the wind at your back power up to potentially cause an upset and take third place position. So this is going to be where Erhan is going to want to get into those drops, push up out of the saddle and put every ounce of power into the crank arms, which it looks like they are doing right now. Oh, wowee. Another upset with a crash right after. Luckily the crash was after the finish line, however. Pedro coming in 5th place. Solid form from Pedro. Verbika, an unfortunate gap that she was imposed on her by a series of crashes. but very solid power and very solid effort put into the bike today. So we have Shaq, who is also from the CADEsport team, about to cross the finish line. Something new for today as well, we have a rider from Argentina. And no shame in that effort by Shaq. Fantastic power put into the bike. All right, so let's take a look at these results. We have Vanessa. Oh, Vanessa is actually in the top spot. Interesting. Fantastic work there for the lead position by Vanessa. And Axel, sorry, I keep making that mistake. I apologize for that. Carl Axel from Sweden in the second place position. That was one that I would not want to have placed bets on for sure. And as you can see, that is by nanoseconds at the best for that pole place position. It's almost 3 seconds ahead of Luca in third place, who, wow, he lost some momentum there with those crashes, and he really put a lot into the bike to get back to that kind of to close up that gap and only be behind by 2 seconds ish. And then Erhan really showing us what they have really been able to push by Pedro, who was initially our main contender there for the top spot. He's now behind by, what is this here, about 12 seconds, 11 seconds. And Vibika, who sadly lost a lot of momentum with those crashes, but another fine example of how the realism mechanics in CADEsport can change anything on a whim. So thank you for joining us. This has been absolutely wonderful. I'll be back with you next week as we continue Pro Power. But like I said, we'll be on a new, fresh map. We'll be out of our fair city of Cyclogent. And so I hope you've enjoyed today's race. Please do go and check out CADEsport at cadesport.com. I've been your host, if you will, your commentator for sure, Mark Allard-Will.